Hello, it's lovely to see you today.
It really is. It's great. And I just want to say thank you to start off with for being a guest on Fizz and Tell today. And I know we're going to go deep because we always do. And this is a podcast for over 18s, just to sort of put it out there. We will be talking about divorce, we're talking about emotions, and we are going to be exploring one of our favorite subjects, which is identity. So before we sort of go on to some of the really, really deep and meaningful stuff, introduce yourself, because of course I know who you are, but I want our lovely viewers to get to meet the wonderful Gemma too.
Thank you. Well, my name's Gemma Sayer and I'm the breakup coach. I work within the realm of Love Your Life coaching, which I created about 3 years ago. And my whole premise is about looking at your life in a way through the process of what a breakup might be. That doesn't necessarily mean it's always a romantic breakup. It can actually mean quite often that it's a breakup from the old self. It's a looking for new identity. It might be within a family where you feel like you need to kind of free yourself from the constrictions that might be there as well. So I kind of look at myself as somebody that has been working with people who are a little bit lost in the nature of where they're going and wanting to free themselves from the ties that might have bound them up until this point. So it's great. And it's an amazing industry to be in, being a part of this.
It really is. And I love your energy. And that's why I'm so pleased that you're here. Can we talk about your breakup, because you've been there? And I think sometimes when I meet coaches, sometimes they're what I class as textbook coaches, and other coaches are coaches who actually have learnt the textbook way and the hard way as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I think my journey has been lifelong. So from being a child up until where I am now, and I'm 40 years of age, and it really has taken me this long to get to this space. So in my journey itself has just been absolutely loaded with learned moments and healing and development. And so absolutely, the idea for me has always been that when I was a kid, I was bullied terribly at school. And it created this trauma within me. And I didn't know that. It was really stuck, massively stuck. I couldn't trust anybody. I felt like I had high confidence, low self-esteem. And as I went into my adulthood, I kind of developed this second sense of self. So this part of myself that just protected what actually was the child within. And so when I kind of went into my adult life, I didn't necessarily have all the tools that I needed to be able to recognize who was good, who was bad, who was going to hurt me, who wasn't. I was just desperate to be loved and desperate to people please. And that led me down a route. And when I got married, I was married for just shy of 10 years in total. And I have this theory that when you know hot water, it's very difficult when you're going into hot water again to recognize it, because you're so used to the temperature, right? So when you go through difficult times in life and when you feel like you are hurt, you tend to end up in circumstances that lead you into the same situation time and time and time again until you conquer it. And so I kind of went through this journey of self-discovery within my marriage, where I was looking for everything to heal me but me. Every tool that was out there, every book, every course I could put myself on, every healing modality I could find, I took on and I ate it all up. And I didn't realize that I was sick in the place. I just thought it was me. There was something wrong with me, because there always had been. Why would people treat me poorly if I was okay? If there was nothing wrong with me, people would be nice to me, right? Yeah. But that wasn't fundamentally true. So I was a little bit of a beacon, and it kind of caused me to live outside of myself. I lived very unconsciously for a very long time. And it wasn't until I was actually in a do or die situation. Do I stay and effectively perish myself? Or do I make a decision to free myself at any cost and develop from that point on? And I think that's probably the nature of where I really started to develop my love for coaching and for developing and looking really closely at identity. So that's the journey.
Wow.
So
I mean, wow. And I can identify with so many of those points. The bullying bit was a huge part of my growing up as well. And you do go inwards and think it's all about what you're doing wrong. You
absolutely.
don't see later on. And it was really interesting because years later, as an adult, one of those bullies contacted me on Facebook to apologize.
Isn't it funny how that happens, as we grow?
Yeah. But what,
Yeah.
the bit that I took away from that is she apologized, and she also said, they picked, because I asked her, why did you pick on me? Why was I the victim of the target and the victim of your bullying? And she said, because you were the strong one. Now, I never saw myself as strong, and she was going through hell, and she was in a very abusive situation growing up as well, which is why she was taking it out on me. And I think it's really hard that, and we don't get it right in schools still today, because if bullies are bullying, I think they're the ones that need the help almost as much as the victims, because there's a reason for it.
Completely agree. And hurt people hurt. So you end up in that situation where it becomes cyclical. And it's really important that you don't allow for that yourself. Yeah. That it is something that you can say, look, I'm going to break this curse that has happened to me, so I don't go forward and keep on hurting. Because even if you're doing it unconsciously, there is an element of where your pain is leaking out. Yeah. And you can't help but be self-protective because you've been so badly hurt. Yeah. So you have to allow for that space to grow and the possibility that actually everything's going to be okay and that it wasn't you. That, like you're saying, that a lot of the time hurt people are just hurting you. And as children, we just don't have tools. Our toolbox as an adult, right?
We have no tools. We have no tools. And again, that's something I'm a big advocate of, is schools need to wake up. Parents need to wake up in teaching kids resilience, teaching them how to emotionally connect with themselves as well as with others. Because as I'm watching children grow up now, my own children, my granddaughter now, I'm watching these people, these young people who don't have the communication skills. They don't understand how to tap into their emotions. Hence, we're seeing so much more mental health. And yes, we've got mental health awareness, but what about mental health tools to combat 100%. The mental health awareness? It's a chicken and egg.
And when you look at it from a woman's point of view, from our point of view, we're going, okay, I can carry on. So you go into your marriage and you say, I have all of this baggage. I don't know what it is. I can't identify with it. It's been so ingrained in me now that I don't know what's me and what's my trauma or what's my challenges. You're kind of going, this is just now me. And there's nothing to differentiate between what is you and what is your pain. So if you don't investigate that then becomes what you hand on to the people around you and potentially your children. And then they potentially go to school and it becomes cyclical. Because when you have this kind of heavy, deserved mentality, I know I deserved it, this because there's something wrong with me, you tend to feed that. And it's really important for us, especially as women, to be able to stand in your own power, in your authenticity and explore it. It's important to take some ownership over elements of parts of things that happen to you, but fundamentally it's up to you to let it go and kind of go, what happened to me was awful. I can understand why it happened to me. I may not be able to forgive wholly, but what I can do is start to put it into place. I can put it into place within me so it makes more sense. Very adult thinking. So in a relationship, you end up bringing all of that stuff in. And I think even though it depends on the relationship that you're in as well, it can really cause a lot of damage and a lot of harm.
Yeah.
Because you need to know yourself, right? You need to kind of really understand yourself on a level in order to show up as the best version of yourself in a relationship.
And I think you've touched on, again, so many valid points. But one of the things I want to home in on with this one is we do lose our identity, and we go through this shedding as a child, going through puberty, as a teenager, then in our 20s. It is cyclical. And we are constantly evolving. And if we're thinking of ourselves as that teenager, that 20-year-old, that 30-year-old, we're holding ourselves back, and we're trying to recreate something that we used to be, rather than embracing who we can be and could be. And I know for me, and also for clients that I've worked with over the years, and it was one of the things that I realized when I was coaching so many clients through breakup 20 so years ago, the biggest thing I realized is there were two different types of clients. There were those that had those breakthrough moments that really took the breakup and re-identified with themselves, refocused on who they wanted to be, rather than who they thought they should be. And there's a big difference. So you've got those that really have got those wings and want to fly, and you've got the others that go into victim and poor me mode.
Absolutely.
And you've got a foot in one camp or another. You can't have a foot in both camps. It doesn't happen. Yes, you can have moments where you feel a bit down and a bit lost, and while you're going through this journey of discovery, there's so much going on. But if you've initially got that sense of, I want to be a better person in spite of this, then you're going to have a much more wholesome, creative, loving, spiritual journey for you. And I think that's so important. And, you know, I love the way that you've created this off the back of what you've gone through as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's really important when you say about being one or the other, that people understand that becomes anchored in their feelings. So if you don't know which one you are, because you don't have the education in maybe what either one means, and that happens quite frequently, where you're searching for something, but you actually don't know what the answer is because you don't know what you're looking for. It just ends up being a feeling. We've become so unconscious in our living that it's really important that we check in with ourselves and that we use our feelings as our anchor to know, okay, so I feel a little bit victimized by this situation, or I feel a lot victimized by this situation. He has hurt me to such a degree that I cannot move forward and that I am stuck. If you start to really set yourself within, if you start to really feel those feelings, it actually becomes a narrative in itself, where you can start going, okay, I'm going to take 2 minutes today and I'm just going to just check in with myself. And I'm just going to feel what I feel. And you'd be amazed how powerful that becomes, but how difficult it is to do. You know, I know with people I've worked with before who are in deep despair because the relationship is so broken and they are so broken from it, that actually laying down for 2 minutes and checking in with themselves becomes so painful and so hard that it's easier to push it away, right? It's easier to go, I'm going to ignore this and hopefully it will leave me. But actually the acknowledgement of it and the acceptance of it, when I say acceptance, it's not accepting what's happened, it's accepting the feeling in the moment. That's the most powerful way to let anything go. And reverting it to myself, and I do remember this in my divorce and afterwards, I remember laying in bed and having this really dark moment of, what do I do now? You know, I've made a big decision. What do I do now? And the anxiety just was flowing over me. Am I going to be a good enough mum to be able to sustain 2 children on my own and still be functional and happy, and for them to be functional and happy and for everything to be okay? And as these feelings really started to come up in me, it almost became uncontrollable by this point. And something I remembered from my past came into my mind. We're just in this moment, I'm just going to let that go. Whatever the feeling is, I'm not going to analyze it. I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to go into a deep dive. I'm just going to let that feeling go for right now. Doesn't mean I'm letting it go forever, but just for right now. And I started to practice that, and it became a really great tool to be able to start really living in the present. So when those feelings came and they started to overwhelm me, of loneliness, separation, all the stuff that tends to really catch you off guard, I started to really anchor myself in my feelings, acknowledge them, and just go, not right now, just not right now. So that when I came to a point where I could deal with them, and this happens a lot with my clients, when it comes to then a point, you can then address it. You can go, I'm ready to talk about this. It might be a week, it might be a month, it might be 12 months. But at some point you go, okay, I'm starting to recognize what this is now. It's a fear of failure. It's a fear of not being enough. It's a fear of being unworthy. It's a fear of just everything crashing down and a massive lack of control. And now I recognize when this feeling comes up, that's what's happening. And then you go, what's in my toolbox that I can go, oh, I know what to do now. Okay. And you experiment then, and it becomes a really powerful way of navigating through.
And I think that's exactly it, is you've got to have the tools in your toolbox, and you've got to have the right tools in your toolbox, and tools that you've practiced, tools that you know work for you. Because as a coach and someone who's trained and done lots of coaching and development and personal development for the last, it's over 30 years that I've been in learning and development and personal development. And there are some tools that you just think, no, that doesn't resonate with me. But one of the best tools I discovered when I was going through my breakup, and one that I've given to thousands of clients over the years, is a really simple one. And I make everybody go, and I've even made friends and family go and write on sticky notes, stop, think, breathe, big capital, put it on a laptop, put it even as a screensaver on your phone, in your car, on the fridge, by the kettle. And it was probably my saving grace, is stop, feel the ground underneath your feet, think, can I do something about this? Do I have control over this? If I haven't, just let it go and breathe. If I can do something about it, what am I going to do about it? Does it make sense? And it's just a really good mantra, stop, think, breathe, that I've adopted well over 10 years now, probably about 15 years. And it's these little things. It's just these little things that make a huge, huge difference.
I completely agree. You know, mastering your mindset becomes an important process and moving forward. And one of the tools, which is so similar to what you're talking about, and what I've always loved to do as well, but this developed a lot later on. I talk about these things as if they just happen and you get to do them. But one of the things that I like to do is I look at my values. I look at the things that are driving me right now. So, you know, what's important to me, because sometimes when those values are hit head on, especially within a relationship, especially within a divorce, your value might be family and marriage, right? And you go through a divorce and both of those values are being tested to their absolute, you know, heightened part.
And often shattered, Gemma. They're often shattered. So your view of those values changes. Absolutely. It's almost like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. The whole thing.
Yeah, 100%. Shattered is a great way of looking at it, because then it goes into multiple pieces, and trying to glue it back together, realizing that actually you have to let it fall. So what I do is I polarize my thinking. If I'm sitting, so again, it's affirming. So if I'm sitting in a space of, I'm never going to recover from this, what I tend to do is I put myself in a situation where I repeat to myself, I am going to recover from this. I'm going to be okay. And that's then where I put these notes together, the same as yourself. And I go, this is what's relevant to me right now. I know I need to affirm this over and over and over again, so I can put myself in a really positive mindset and move forward in a way that is actually really comfortable for me, because you're only polarizing your thoughts, right? So they're yours to polarize. And then you can start to move forward. So I agree with you. It's stop, think, and breathe becomes a really big part of that.
It does. And I think it's also part of you, in those moments of doing that, realizing, firstly, you're okay. You're okay. When the world feels like it's crashing and your life is shattered in a million pieces, and everything that you identified, that created your identity and you identified as you, has gone. It's just disappeared. So starting you again is incredibly scary. It's incredibly scary. It was probably one of the most scariest things I've ever done, is thinking, okay, who am I today? What am I today? Who do I want to be? Yes, I'm a mum. I'm a mum first. I've got my business, but who am I? Because as you said, you wander around in this this little world of survival, and right, I've got to do this for the children, I've got to do this for work, I've got to do all of this. But when you actually stop and think about you, that can be quite overwhelming and terrifying. And I haven't got time to even think about that today. I'm not even going to go there, because it's just too scary to understand what my wants, wishes, desires, and needs are. Because I don't know. I've got no clue. And I always tell clients, it's okay to not know, but it's just as important to embrace the journey of discovery. And I don't know about you, Jen, but I'm still learning who I am. I'm still evolving. I'm still changing. I'm still adding to the identity. I'm still taking away bits of the identity. And it's not a done deal, is it? It's one of those things that has lots and lots of moving parts. There's not, yay, I've graduated.
Completely. And I think that becomes, you have to get very comfortable early on with that, the fact that actually when you're growing and when you're learning and when you're processing, because I was thinking about this morning before today, and one of the things again that is really important is to understand that everybody's different. So everybody's going to have a different effect on you. Yeah. So when you look at your relationship and meeting your husband and then divorcing your husband and then being different people after the divorce, and then meeting somebody new and then bring another energy, and you're constantly growing through that, and you have to find a way to be flexible and adaptive emotionally to those changes. And then again, it becomes incredibly difficult for yourself in some way, or challenging is probably a better word, where you have to reassess. So what are my values now? How do I feel now? What's happening for me now? Because otherwise you get stuck in that cyclical old behavior that could end up again being even more challenging. So absolutely, it is a lifelong journey, and the earlier you get comfortable with that, the better you will always be. Always growing and always learning.
And it helps you to make better decisions on meeting a new partner. I know people always come to me with my matchmaker hat on and say, right, I'm ready for a new relationship. Right, great, fantastic. What work have you done for you?
Yeah.
No, right? I'm back to where I was, and well, that's the worst place to be.
I love that because that really is an opening sentence, isn't it? I'm ready, and then you have to ask, well, what work have you done? What's changed between then and now for you, as opposed to just going, oh great, okay, let's set the cycle back up again for you. Let's actually support you in change, as opposed to putting you back on the ride and expecting you to survive and be healthy and happy. Absolutely. It's so important to ask our clients those things, because they will know better than you as well. Like who they are at this point, they will know better. Do you find a lot of the time as well, you get people that are particularly stuck, who aren't open to change?
Yes.
They want a better life, but they are so entrenched in their own thinking that it's almost impossible to get through. The wall is steel, and you're
and I think the other thing is some people want to recreate what they had in a past relationship and try and fix it in a new relationship. And I think that's also incredibly dangerous. Well, I need a particular type, I need this, I need that. Why? Well, that's because my ex was like that, and I'm familiar with that, and I'm comfortable with that. Well, actually, that didn't work.
Sure.
It wasn't working. So sometimes you have to try something very new, very different as to who you are today. Because when you start a relationship again, you're an incredibly different person to the one you were a year ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And people forget that. And I think people get very stuck in this sort of list mentality of thinking, well, that worked for me before, it's going to work for me again. And it's not a good way of going into dating, going into a new relationship. And when you're dating, you'll date a number of different people, and it's finding someone, and I always say this, it's finding someone who you can be your most authentic self with, and vice versa.
I remember coming out of the divorce, and I didn't date for about, I don't know, it's been about 12 months afterwards. So after our separation, I didn't date for about 12 months. And then I had these 3, I don't know what you call them, they weren't relationships, 3 situationships, I think they're called. And the first situationship was like the ghost of Christmas past. The second one was ghost of Christmas present. And the third one was ghost of Christmas future. And the idea was that actually I experimented with completely different first. And then the second one was mediocre. It was kind of normal, but there was a little bit different. And the third one was almost exactly a carbon copy of my ex-husband. So it was like an obscure learned moment where I went, okay, I'm going to experiment here and see what happens. And then I stopped. Then I took a break for about 3 months. And with all of that knowledge of experimenting and learning and not committing to anything straight away, you know, I knew what love felt like, and I knew I wanted that back, but I wasn't going to give myself wholly until I felt as comfortable as what I could be. And then I met my partner now, and he is completely polarized to my ex-husband, but in such a great way, because he's actually, instead of it being different to my ex, it's more that he's more suited to me.
Yes.
And because I did the work, and because I healed, and because I focused so much on myself and my own healing journey in this process, that I actually, when I met him, I was ready to meet him.
And did you recognize he was who you needed?
Really funny, because he said to me, you know, you're going to know within 30 seconds of meeting me. And I was like, well, that's a little bit short for
that's
my
very
life.
Confident.
I want a little bit more. He was like, we both know in 30 seconds whether we're meant to be together or not. He had this really strong belief. And it was 3 seconds. He walked in the pub, he put his coat down, offered me a drink, and I was like, okay. There's an energy here that was so comfortable, and it was so supportive in its nature, that I just went, okay, this is going to be a good thing. And I've allowed for the trouble. We both brought humongous, we're both divorced. We're both going through divorce at the time that we met. And we both had so much baggage. So we had to support each other in the healing, knowing that there was going to be fires that we were going to have to put out for potentially the first year or so, because of what we were both bringing to the party. But because the relationship was developing healthily on the left-hand side over here, those fires actually became less, and what we thought was going to be a fire actually ended up only being a tiny little problem. So it's a really positive outcome to something that was a lifelong journey to get here. And he has created an emotional platform for me to be able to launch from. And that's nothing I've ever had before. Yeah. And definitely something when I'm coaching as well that I find incredibly important to share, that there has to be an element of foundation, of security that isn't perceived, that is not in words, that is actually in foundation and action, and then make an assessment. If that isn't there first, you're probably tricking yourself. You're probably going back to old habits. You're probably not tuning in with the journey that you've potentially gone through, or the learned moments that you've had. And you're falling through the trap, you know, the trap door on a stage, and down you go. And it's hollow at the bottom.
So and there's nothing there, it's completely empty.
Exactly.
Cold and lonely. Yeah.
Cold and lonely. And you wonder how you got back there again. You know, the feelings. I wondered how you get back there again. And I know when I talk to a lot of people, it's, how am I here again? How am I experiencing this again? Some of them are triggers, some of them are action points, but some of them are because you're going through this cyclical process of healing. You're trying in, and it's very subconscious what we do. We recreate the circumstance in order to fix it.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time that comes out in a new partner, right? You meet this person and you're going, I need you to love me. But actually you need to love yourself first. You need to fix that part of yourself first.
But you're giving someone that safe space to do that, because often that fixing can't happen until you're in something that's loving, that's safe, that's secure, that's supportive, and that's authentic. And you know, people expect fireworks and violins and all of those things when they meet someone. They say, well, I will know. You'll know, but it's not the fireworks that go off. It's this sense of almost, oh shit.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. Fireworks tend to be a lot of the time the lust, the infatuation.
It is completely lust. Yeah.
And it's that moment,
and it's those
where
hormones, isn't it? It's the hormones, that it's that cocktail of heady hormones that are taking over and just going, woohoo, we're gonna have some fun here. But that's not what creates a proper relationship.
100%. And that's why I always will go back that it's so important to know yourself first. At every stage, you know, really know yourself first. So when you meet that person and that person is right for you, it's almost like the puzzle pieces start to fit that little bit more comfortably. So when you go out there and you start dating people, you kind of have that sense of, oh, actually, I can see the value here. You're probably not somebody I might have chosen before, but I can now start to feel and see the value. So yeah, it's eyes wide open, isn't it?
It really is. And it is all about emotions and feelings. I always say, till I'm blue in the face, love isn't a list. It isn't someone's height or someone's size or someone's shape or someone's job. It's how they make you feel and how you make them feel. And I will say that till the cows come home, because that's the basis of really knowing that you've met your person, is how you feel. Yeah.
Yeah,
I know you and I could talk all day about this, but I want to end on when someone is in that space of thinking, okay, I need to do something. I know I need to make some changes, but they're scary. I don't know what to do. What 3 main pointers would you tell someone to start, just to make a start in getting on that ladder of change, development, and feeling comfortable with who you are?
The first thing I would always tell anybody is write yourself a letter. And I don't want any judgment on this letter. This is not you judging what comes out. It's not perfection. It's just a letter to yourself. And it has to be the most honest that you've ever been in your life. The paper and the pen is not going to judge you. Only you have that power. So I want you to subside that and go, okay, I'm just going to write myself a letter.
And I'm going to just stop you there. One thing, sorry. You have to write it. Don't type it.
You have to write it.
You have to write it. Yeah. Because it's that connection.
Absolutely. It's that pen on paper, and your hand is just going to do the work. It's not about engaging your brain and thinking through. It's literally your hand doing the work. The second one for me would be read or listen. If you prefer a book that is audible, I prefer to listen. A lot of people prefer to read. And I'm not going to give you this is the book you need to read, because you will find your flow when it comes to self-development, self-help, self-support, just opening your eyes. It doesn't even necessarily to be in that genre, but just a book that you find engages a part of yourself, so you can start to separate. It's a psychological tool where you can start to separate yourself from the rhetoric that's happening in your head. Some people like to watch and binge watch television, but actually what I find by listening and reading is it just allows you to calm down. It allows you to be a part and present in the moment. And the third thing would always be is to reach out, whether it's talking to a friend, whether it's talking to a coach or a therapist, or if it's talking to yourself in a video diary, because you actually become your own best friend. So you tend to talk to yourself. I tend to find this, and I encourage this. Ask yourself the questions. How do I feel today? What can I do about my feelings today? How can I move forward? Because you know yourself better than anybody's ever going to know you. So respond to yourself. well, I feel quite hurt today. Well, why do you feel hurt? I feel hurt because, and then you start to have real revelations about what's happening in the internal dialogue. So there would be my three things. The first one is write yourself a letter. The second one is read a book or listen to a book. And the third one is reaching out and making sure that you are connecting with other people.
I love that. I love that. 3 wise words of wisdom, tried and tested, I'm sure, Gemma.
Tried and tested. I mean, it comes from the soul. Like,
oh, I know. It does. It does. It does. And don't be afraid to try things. And if something doesn't work, try something else. Don't give up. Don't give up on you. Absolutely. Gemma, as always, wonderful. Thank you. Love chatting with you. People can get hold of you. I'm going to put things wherever this is being posted. Obviously it goes into the YouTube channel. Wherever it's being posted, there will be ways of people knowing how to get hold of you. And thank you again. And if you like Fizz and Tell, please share, please subscribe. We're trying to grow this community to support women and who are just going through the changes past 40, whether it's physical, emotional, psychological, or all of the above. So thank you everybody for watching, and until next time, thank you. And thank you, Gemma. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye.